I watched K-pop Demon Hunters on a random Tuesday night. I'm a guy in my 20s. I don't listen to K-pop, I don't follow Korean drama, I don't have a favorite idol. I clicked on it because the trailer looked visually insane. Like someone figured out how to animate a fever dream and make it look cool. That was my entire reason. And I found it decent. Okay, so the story moves fast. Really fast. Doom scroll fast. Barely any breathing room between scenes. The plot hits beats you've seen before. The animation was genuinely something I hadn't seen before. But the story? Nothing I couldn't recognize from somewhere else. And the songs? Soda Pop was stuck in my head for 4 straight days after. 4 days. And I don't even like K-pop. So I finished it, thought fine, that was fine, and moved on. Then the numbers hit. Over 500 million views total. The most watched Netflix original film of all time. 4 songs simultaneously in the Billboard Hot 100 Top 10. The first time in chart history a film soundtrack had done that. A 2-day theatrical sing-along event that hit #1 at the US box office. The first Netflix film to ever do that. Lego sets, Hasbro, and Mattel fighting over the same IP simultaneously. People rewatching this thing on repeat for months. I kept thinking, how? Like, genuinely, how? Listen, here's what I eventually figured out. Every layer of this film, the marketing, the music, the demographic, but the craft underneath all of it pointed in the same direction. That kind of integration doesn't happen by accident, and it's almost completely absent from the conversation about why this thing broke every record it touched. Because 2 years earlier, Disney released Wish for their 100th anniversary, a musical, backed by one of the biggest marketing budgets in animation history. It bombed quietly. And this film, the K-pop one, the Demon Hunter one, the one nobody had merch ready for, broke records Wish couldn't touch. So that's what this video is. I'm not here to call K-pop Demon Hunters a masterpiece. It has real problems, and I'll get to those. But I needed to understand how something I personally found okay became a cultural phenomenon. I'm Mac, this is Scene Shift. Let's get into it. The story of how this film got made is almost as interesting as the film itself. It starts in 2018. Maggie Kong, a Korean-Canadian story artist who had spent over a decade working in Hollywood animation, pitched the concept at Sony. The pitch was personal. Born in Seoul and raised in Toronto, Kong had spent her career working on other people's stories. She wanted to make something that represented Korean culture at a global scale for the first time. Something that reflected who she actually was, equally rooted in both Korean and North American culture, rather than choosing one for the sake of marketability. Korean demonology was her starting point. The Choseung Saja, Grim Reaper figures from Korean folklore, became the blueprint for the villain group. K-pop was added in later, and by Kong's own account, that addition changed everything. The film instantly became larger in scale, became a musical, became a spectacle. That merging of 2 deeply Korean things, one ancient, one modern, is what made the premise feel genuinely original rather than derivative. Almost a year into development, Chris Applehans came on as co-director. The two of them had overlapping instincts about what the film needed to be emotionally. A story about the damage that hiding yourself does, about what conditional acceptance costs a person over time. That idea, hiding yourself costs you something real, became the beating heart of the whole thing. So from the beginning, this wasn't a project greenlit for market reasons. 2 people had something personal to say, and found a premise that let them say it. Sony developed it, then passed on a full theatrical release. Their reasoning made sense on paper. Original IP, no existing franchise, no guaranteed opening weekend return. So Sony took the safer play. They sold global distribution rights to Netflix for a modest upfront payment, and kept the animation production at Sony Pictures Imageworks. Netflix financed the distribution and let the creative team make what they wanted. Neither Sony nor Netflix had consumer merchandise ready when it dropped. No Mattel deal, no Hasbro agreement, no Lego pipeline. That detail tells you exactly what both studios expected: a solid performer. Something that would do okay, get watched, and disappear from the algorithm in 2 weeks. That's what most Netflix originals do. Massive spike in week 1, steep cliff after the first 2 weeks. Algorithm moves on. K-pop Demon Hunters did not follow that pattern. 10 weeks after release, viewership was still growing. Word of mouth was driving it. People were re-watching. Media analysts started comparing its staying power to Star Wars and Titanic, not because of opening weekend numbers, but because people kept telling other people they had to see it, months after it dropped. Sony executives later described their decision to sell the IP as, paraphrasing, Certainly a mistake. One of the bigger understatements in recent Hollywood history. They handed away a billion-dollar cultural property for a modest upfront check because they didn't believe in it. That same property went on to win a Grammy Award, receive 2 Oscar nominations, and become the most watched film Netflix has ever put out. Now, the easy answer to why did this get so big is the K-pop fandom. That answer isn't wrong. By 2024, global Hallyu fans, the Korean wave following, numbered around 200 million. A built-in, fiercely dedicated audience was ready to receive something that actually respected their culture and their music. They showed up on day one, covered the choreography on TikTok within hours, made fan cams, created the kind of buzz that no marketing budget can manufacture. That mattered a lot. But it doesn't explain all of it. Plenty of films trying to ride the K-pop wave have quietly disappeared. The genre has been around long enough now that you'd expect more hits if fandom alone was the formula. Having 200 million potential viewers doesn't guarantee 10 weeks of sustained growth. It doesn't put 4 songs in the top 10 simultaneously. It doesn't get soda pop stuck in the head of a 20-something guy in his apartment who doesn't follow K-pop. The fandom gave this film fuel. This video is about the foundation they built on. If you're enjoying this, subscribe and drop a like. It genuinely helps. Also, come hang out with me on Instagram at @MacandFlix_ to see my unfiltered thoughts on what I'm currently watching. Now, the part nobody's talking about. Here's the part of this conversation that's almost entirely absent from everything written about this film. The writing. Ask most people why K-pop Demon Hunters worked, and they'll say the visuals, the music, the fandom. The screenplay barely comes up. When it does, you get 2 completely opposite takes. Either it's an emotionally devastating piece of animation screenwriting, or it's a shallow, rushed mess. Both sides are looking at the same script and missing the same thing. The writing is invisible on purpose. Invisible writing is a real concept in screenwriting. It means the script never draws attention to itself. No dialogue that sounds like exposition wearing a costume. No plot mechanics that break the fiction. No moments where you can see the gears moving under the surface. The writing's job is to hold everything together without getting in the way. In a 95-minute animated musical, constant visual information, wall-to-wall music, non-stop, choreography competing for the audience's attention every second, invisible writing is genuinely hard to pull off. And it's extremely easy to mistake for the writing not being there at all. Here's what the script is actually doing behind the scenes. The plot looks simple. Rival bands, enemies to lovers tension, save the world from a demon king. You've seen versions of this scaffolding before, but that familiar structure is a deliberate choice. A streamlined plot creates space for the things the film actually cares about to breathe. Think about what this story is actually about. Shame, conditional love, the cost of performing a version of yourself that hides what you really are. Those are heavy interior ideas. They need room to land. An overly complicated external plot would compete with them, fragment the audience's attention, muddy the emotional clarity. The simplicity is structural work. The film is about shame, about hiding a fundamental part of yourself because you believe, deep in your bones, that revealing it would make you unacceptable to the people you love most. Rumi being half demon is every person who ever felt like something about them was too broken to show anyone. The demon patterns spreading across her skin during the second act are what happens internally when you spend too long pretending the thing you're most afraid of doesn't exist. Her mentor, Celine, who raised her, who built Huntrix around her, told her early to keep the patterns hidden until she seals the Hanmoon. Hide the flaw. Perform perfectly. That instruction is baked into how Rumi sees herself before the film even begins. The entire story is the dismantling of it. Look, here's the part that makes the K-pop setting so precise as a choice for this theme. The idol industry is literally built on the premise that performers must suppress their real selves to maintain a manufactured image. Eating habits monitored, relationships, hidden personal struggles kept completely off camera. The industry runs on the exact same deal the film is examining. You're loved, but only as long as you hide the real you. When Rumi hides her demon patterns under stage makeup, she's doing exactly what the industry already trained her to do, applied literally to her body. The Demon Hunter world and the K-pop world are running the same rule. Perform the version of yourself that's acceptable. Drop the performance, and you lose everything. That's why the film doesn't feel like a gimmick. K-pop girl group fights demons should be absurd. It isn't because both halves are secretly about the same thing. That shouldn't work, but it does. And once you see why, you can't unsee it. There are multiple moments in the film where the girls are just being people. Bathrobes, eating gukbap rice and soup at 2 in the morning, being genuinely weird and exhausted and completely un-idol-like. Mira blow-drying her hair in places she absolutely shouldn't. Zoe being the group's anxious youngest member who just wants everyone to be okay. These scenes feel like the film exhaling, and every one of them is doing real structural work beneath the surface. The audience needs to trust the friendship before the friendship falling apart means anything. You can't make someone feel the weight of a relationship breaking if you haven't first made them believe the relationship was real. Screenwriting calls this earning the beat. Those quiet, domestic moments are the foundation, and they required someone in the production to fight for them against the constant pressure to add more spectacle, more music, more action. In most supernatural action stories, civilians are passive, people to be protected, obstacles to be moved out of danger. The Home Moon changes that completely. The barrier's strength comes from the genuine emotional connection between Huntrix and their fans. Their music powers the protection. Every concert sequence is load-bearing story. The music creates the barrier, the fans keep the barrier alive. Performing with full emotional honesty is a literal survival mechanic. The script connected its big idea directly to how the plot actually works. When Rumi can't reach the high notes in Golden, the Hunmoon starts flickering. When she finally performs the song fully, all of herself on stage, nothing hidden, the barrier becomes permanent. The internal journey and the external stakes are the exact same thing. That kind of structural integration is hard to pull off. When it works, the audience feels it even if they can't name what they're feeling. And I'll be honest, when I went back and tracked all of this, I was genuinely impressed. This is not what I expected to find inside a K-pop movie. Jinu is the leader of the enemy group. Charming, threatening, obviously drawn to Rumi in ways that complicate everything. But what he's actually doing in the script is simpler and smarter than that. He's a mirror. He and Rumi share the exact same wound, musicians carrying shame about something fundamental. His story is a projection of what her future looks like if she lets the shame win. And here's the part most viewers miss. The backstory he gives Rumi when they first meet in secret is a lie. He presents himself as a tragic figure, a musician who made a desperate deal to escape poverty and has regretted it ever since. The truth, revealed in the second act, is darker. He made the deal for personal gain, willingly left his family behind while he thrived. The tragic backstory was a manipulation. He saw Rumi's vulnerability and used it. That reveal reframes every scene they had together as something more sinister than enemies to lovers tension. His eventual sacrifice in the climax then carries genuine weight because you know what he was for most of the film, and you see what it costs him to stop being that. He runs entirely on shame. Find someone's secret, whisper it back at them, watch the defenses collapse. And Rumi's lowest point, I want to actually stop here for a second because the film earns this, arrives at the Idol Awards. The Saja boys play the takedown diss track without warning. Fake versions of Mira and Zoe expose Rumi's patterns in front of thousands of people. Think about what that moment actually is. Every wall she built over her entire career demolished at once, in front of thousands of people, with the two people she most needed beside her replaced by demons wearing their faces. Wait, think about that for a second. The people she trusts most, used against her, at the exact moment she's most exposed. That's a brutal thing to put a character through. She defeats him by stopping, by agreeing with the shame out loud on a global stage, by singing something raw and unfinished about her scars being part of her, the version of herself she never let anyone see, instead of the polished performance she was trained to deliver. What destroys Guima is the thing he was built to prevent. His power runs on secrets. Rumi stops keeping hers. He has nothing left. The answer to the problem is the same thing that created it. That's not common in blockbuster animation. Blockbuster animated films don't usually end with an argument. They end with a bigger explosion. This one ends with the character choosing to be seen. The music got people in the door. The visuals kept them watching. The screenplay is why people came back for a second viewing. You can't rewatch a vibe. You can rewatch a story that keeps showing you things you didn't fully catch the first time. The invisible writing is invisible precisely because it keeps revealing itself on repeat. The more attention you give it, the more it gives back. The staying power comes from craft doing its job quietly, while everything louder takes all the credit. All of that craft would have meant nothing if nobody had showed up, so it's worth understanding exactly why they showed up, and why they kept coming back. Hollywood animated film campaigns run a predictable playbook. Teaser trailer, full trailer, character posters, press junket, premiere. Safe, familiar, and over the last several years, consistently failing to generate cultural traction for original animated projects. The K-pop Demon Hunters team scrapped that playbook entirely. They ran what the K-pop industry calls an idol rollout. Long before the film existed publicly, Before the soundtrack dropped, before the first trailer landed, the marketing team released a series of short, lore-heavy videos, character reveals, backstory content, visual identity drops for Huntrix and the Saja Boys. They explained who these fictional groups were, what their relationships looked like, what world they existed in, before there was a single frame of film to watch. This is exactly how real K-pop labels debut new artist groups. And it works because of what it does to you before the main event arrives. By the time the film hit Netflix, people were already fans. They had a favorite member they had opinions about, the rival group they were emotionally invested in, a story they hadn't seen yet. They approached the film the way a K-pop fan approaches a comeback from a group they'd followed for months, with attachment, curiosity, stakes. This kind of marketing creates ownership. People rewatch things they feel ownership over. They make content about them, tell other people with the kind of personal enthusiasm no advertising can replicate. The theatrical sing-along event is the clearest evidence of how deep that relationship went. The film was already on Netflix. Audiences who had already watched it at home paid theater ticket prices to sit in a room full of strangers and watch it again. 2 days, around $18 million, number 1 at the US box office. That only happens when a piece of media stops being content and becomes an experience you want to share. The marketing built that relationship before the film was even finished. The marketing could build that ownership because the film itself was designed for the people most likely to create it. And that starts with an audience decision that runs completely against how the big animation studios have always operated. Disney, Pixar, DreamWorks. The entire legacy animation model is built around targeting kids first. Kids watch things on repeat. Parents pay for the ticket. Capture a child's loyalty early and you have a customer for decades. It's proven, reliable, and it has built entire empires. The K-pop Demon Hunters team deliberately went in the opposite direction. They built this film for people in their 20s, and you can see that choice in the specifics. The couch scenes where the girls are in bathrobes eating gukbap at 2 a.m. are built for an audience that understands the gap between a polished public persona and who you actually are when you get home. Zoe's anxiety, Mira's family rejection, Rumi's fear of being fundamentally unacceptable. Adult fears, packaged in a gorgeous animated film. The themes of shame and conditional acceptance land differently for someone who has spent years hiding parts of themselves from coworkers, family, a partner. The film was designed to reach the age group that most animated films condescend to. The logic was that young adults dominate social media conversation. They decide week to week what's culturally relevant. When they go crazy for something, it becomes the thing everyone is talking about. Younger audiences follow. Kids watch what their older siblings are watching, what the creators they follow online are posting about. So instead of starting at the bottom of the age demographic and hoping older audiences noticed, this film started the conversation at the top and let it pull everyone else in. The result was an audience that spanned every age group, something no studio spreadsheet could have predicted. And it explains why the film went viral rather than just performing well. Viral is about where the conversation starts and how fast it spreads. Starting the conversation at the right demographic level gets you an audience. What got Soda Pop stuck in my head for 4 straight days, and I want to be clear, I still don't listen to K-pop, was something else entirely. They went straight to Teddy Park, the producer behind Blackpink, one of the architects of what modern K-pop sounds like globally. EJAE, a Korean-American songwriter and industry veteran, joined the project around its inception in 2020, working on the music from the ground up for 5 years before eventually becoming the singing voice of Rumi herself. That timeline matters. Her voice is woven into the film's musical DNA from the earliest stages of development. The result was a soundtrack that behaved like a real K-pop album release. Songs charted independently. Golden spent 8 weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, the first K-pop song with female lead vocalists to ever reach number 1 on the Hot 100. 4 songs simultaneously in the top 10, the first time in chart history. That last one stopped me when I read it. 4 songs, simultaneously, in the top 10, from a Netflix animated film. That's insane. What this created was a feedback loop normal film marketing cannot manufacture. People who found the songs on Spotify watched the film. People who watched the film went back to the music. The 2 platforms fed each other continuously for months, each one pulling new people toward the other. That integration is what made the soundtrack behave the way a real album behaves. Golden means something specific. You don't need to have watched the movie to feel it. But knowing what Rumi is actually singing about makes it hit differently. That double function, accessible on its own, richer with context, is exactly what made the feedback loop work. Which brings me to the part none of this changes. But even an engine this well built has a top speed, and the script hits its limits hard. The film has real problems. They all come from one specific place. This film tried to do too much in 95 minutes. 3 full character arcs, 2 villains, a complete supernatural mythology, multiple concert sequences, and an emotional climax that needs you to care deeply about every relationship it has built. All crammed into a single sitting. The biggest casualty is Rumi's relationship with Celine. The film knows this dynamic is rich, a mother figure who loved conditionally without realizing what that cost her daughter. But it spends almost no time in the actual rupture between them. In the third act, when Rumi begs Celine to just end it, the moment lands. But lighter than it should, because we haven't lived inside that relationship enough to feel the full weight of that request. Mira and Zoe get the same treatment. The film knows their wounds and mentions them, but doesn't have the runtime to develop them. You understand their struggles the way you understand a fact. Rumi's you feel in your chest. The Saja boys, aside from Jinu, barely register as individuals. For a film specifically critiquing the manufactured hollow side of the idol industry, there's something worth noticing about the villain group ultimately feeling kind of manufactured and hollow themselves. The film succeeded with these limitations intact, and the craft is strong enough that most people felt them only as a vague sense that certain things could have been more. So I went back and watched K-pop Demon Hunters again after going through all of this. The pacing issues are still real. Some characters still get shortchanged in ways you can feel. The film bit off more than 95 minutes can comfortably chew, and it shows in specific places. But here's what changed on the second watch. I stopped being inside the entertainment and started watching the skeleton of the thing. The couch scenes carry more weight when you know they're doing real work. The Honmun flickering during Golden takes on a whole new meaning when you understand what it's actually tracking. Jinu becomes genuinely unsettling when you know everything he was doing in those early scenes. I genuinely didn't expect any of that to be there. I went in looking for reasons the film got lucky. I found a film that knew exactly what it was doing. The first time I watched this, I was a 20-something guy who clicked on it because the trailer looked insane. I found it decent, nothing special, and I moved on. The second time, I was watching a group of people who had something specific to say. About shame, about hiding, about what it costs to perform a version of yourself that isn't real. People who found the exact right premise to say it, worked for years to make sure the backbone was solid enough to hold everything up, and then trusted that audiences would find it, even when the studios didn't believe in it. The fandom was the fuel, but the craft was the engine, and the engine was running the whole time. I just couldn't hear it over everything else. That's the thing about invisible writing. You don't notice it until you go looking, and once you find it, you can't stop seeing it. That's why people kept rewatching. That's why the numbers kept climbing 10 weeks out. That's why a film nobody had merch ready for became a billion-dollar cultural property. Every layer pointed in the same direction. The thesis wasn't in the marketing. It wasn't in the Billboard charts. It was always in the script. Everything else was just the world catching up. The visuals brought the world in. The invisible writing is why they never left. There's a studio that used to do exactly that, and then something changed. That's the next video. I'll see you there.